In today's episode, my HS tried to punish me for filing a First Amendment lawsuit against them. I used it to get into my dream college. My boss versus the Wharf rat, or how I used music to annoy the heck out of my boss. You want me to write lines? You got it, teacher man. So let's get started. My HS tried to punish me for filing a First Amendment lawsuit against them. I used it to get into my dream college. Throwaway because it'll be easy to find my real identity. In 2008 I was involved in a federal lawsuit when my rural Texas high school tried to suspend me for wearing a shirt supporting then Democratic hopeful John Edwards. Hindsight is 2020. They said it was a violation of the dress code, which was only ever selectively enforced. My parents had my back and agreed that it was, to quote my very white dad, redneck cracker nonsense. I'll never forget during the initial meeting when my principal called in a school board member. He said that if I got suspended I would probably get kicked off the football team, and that could hurt me getting into college. It didn't matter, I was a miserable player and a smart kid, so it wasn't gonna be what took me to college. But the slimy fake concern as he tried to leverage my future against my speech is something I'll never forget. Anyway, as the case goes on, the squeeze gets tighter. First they have the football coaches try to get me to drop it, having the football coaches talk about how my selfishness means that they can't wear Fellowship of Christian Athlete shirts anymore, trying to embarrass me in front of the team. I'm a fat kid who openly plays Magic the Gathering in high school, hit me with your best shot, I have no shame. Next they host a meeting with all the teachers telling them I'm a problem, and that they need to keep an eye on me in case I slip up. I found this out years after the fact when I bumped into my English teacher at a friend's wedding. Finally, they just start pulling in students from my classes to get them to say bad stuff about me. I was a class clown, so this turns into every single dirty joke, rude comment, or loud fart I ever made getting reported to school administration. Which then leads to this awful little toady vice principal calling me and my parents in and reading them back in front of my mother. That one stung. My parents still knew it was bullsh*t, but who wants their locker room jokes aired in front of their mom? They used this as pretext to expel me for 6 weeks, citing inappropriate sexual conduct. They shoved me into the disciplinary alternative education program, and I am F***king steaming. The program is basically where they warehouse kids with emotional problems they can't handle. You just sit in a room in a refurbished insane asylum and can't do anything but read or use the computer for monitored educational purposes. You also get booted from extracurriculars while you're in there. I know at this point they want me to make a scene so they can punish me further, so I do the exact opposite. I channel all my rage and new free time into my schoolwork. Doing homework I would usually ignore because I knew I could ace the test. Now I'm doing both and my GPA is climbing. I start looking into scholarships and find a bunch that are really interested in political activism, and guess who now knows a little bit about that? I apply and rip my school a hole in every one. Then, I work with my dad and we find an attorney who will take our case pro bono, which means while the school bleeds fees it doesn't cost us anything to keep it in court. I spent those weeks like a monk, motivated entirely by spite, doing everything I could to make their bullsh*t work for me. I got out, got back on all my teams and ended up applying for a prestigious honors program at my dream school. Not only did I get in, but I got way more financial support than I thought I would. Eventually we lost the case, but the school had to abolish the dress code anyway, because they couldn't afford to get sued over it again. I don't like the idea that a school lost money, but man, they made the choice. They could have backed down whenever. Now I've graduated law school, am taking the bar in 2 weeks, and already have a job investigating government corruption. I'm getting paid to be a pain in the ass of petty authority, and it's pretty sweet. My boss versus the Wharf rat, or how I used music to annoy the heck out of my boss. Come with me back in time to the mid-90s. Boys II Men were warbling their love songs, Madonna was still trying to be a virgin, and I was working with a promotions firm in the capital city of my province. Now the city I live near has one of the largest natural harbors in the world. That should give you a hint, haha, with said harbor comes a lot of waterfront property with wharfs or docks attached to them. Everything from a sugar factory at one end to the shipyards several miles away at the other. Along with the wharfs come the typical yet disgusting residents. Giant wharf rats. These guys are big. They are smelly, and they are vicious. Fortunately, they only come out at night. Usually, the building I worked in was part of a 3-building complex located right on the water and surrounded on 3 sides by a large, interconnected dockage. Now that I have painted the picture of where I worked, let me tell you about my boss. He was a dick. We shall call him Steve. Steve was a skinny little weasel who prided himself on running a tight office. Steve had no real authority in the office, other than a glorified office manager. However, his ego was so inflated he thought he was the ultimate authority on everything and everybody. He was also ginormously stupid. That sad combination of ego and stupidity would one day land him in federal prison, but that's another story for another day. Steve and I got along okay. I am pretty easygoing and tended to try and do little extras around the office to boost morale that he seemed to appreciate. We only ever clashed heads when I would dare to point out his stupidity, in a nice way, I swear. One day I arrived at work in a pretty good mood. I had my Tim's in one hand and an orange scone in the other. We were starting a new promotional campaign that day that happened to be one of my favorites, and I was looking forward to it. Steve was not in a good mood. Maybe his favorite cafe was out of mocha, or I took the last scone. Whatever the reason, he was decidedly bitchy, and was snapping at everybody to shut up and get to work. Fine. I went to my desk located in the very back corner of the office and immediately noticed a rather distinctly unpleasant odor. It hung in the air like a cloud of toxic doom. I swear I cold tasted, it was that bad. I walked over to Steve's office where he sat brooding over his missing morning muffins and knocked on his door. Steve, what? Me, there is an incredibly bad odor near my desk. We need to call building maintenance. Reasonable, right? Apparently not. Steve, who the F***ck cares? Get back to work. Me, I cannot work in that stench. It's nauseating. Steve, get to work now. I don't care what you do, just do it. Compliance activated. Now, one thing you need to know about Steve: his favorite thing to do was to sit at his desk with his legs up and listen in on our phone calls. He claimed it was quality control. We, however, now know he was fishing for other information. There was, however, one thing that I don't think Steve realized. Whenever he began to listen to a phone, there would be an ever so slight clicking noise that was quite audible if you were listening for it. I was listening for it. I spent the next 45 minutes singing to Steve. Each time I heard the click, I would stop what I was doing, as long as no client was on the line, haha, and sing my song. It really stinks back here. Oh yes, it stinks back here. There is something dead over here. In the wall that is so tall. Near my chair, it fills the air with its pong. This is my song. Various and assorted tunes like that, loudly and very off-key. Pretty soon the office was in helpless gales of laughter as I caroled away about my sad, sorry predicament. There once was a rat named Paul. I think he is dead in my wall. Steve lasted, like I said, about 45 minutes before he came storming out of his office and over to my desk, where he stopped dead, gagged, turned pale, and mumbled about building maintenance before scuttling back to his office with his weasel tail between his legs. That corner of the office was declared off limits for about a week. My desk was moved to more fragrant digs, and Steve? He pouted for a few weeks but eventually got his swagger back, until the government raided his office, that is. But I was on holiday when that happened and had nothing to do with it, I swear. R.I.P. Paul the Wharf Rat. You want me to write lines? You got it, teacher man. I was enrolled in French immersion school growing up, which basically means you learn everything in French. Now, for kids who don't speak French as their first language, sewing your work in French was one thing, but actually speaking French in class to your friends is another. Teachers tried to come up with creative ways to bribe you into speaking French in class, like earning points for prizes for speaking in French. By middle school though, we kids knew the teachers really couldn't do much about it, and we would speak in English when we were working on stuff, especially in math class where it was just easier to explain concepts in your first language. One day, however, my grade 9 math teacher decided he had had enough with me, in particular speaking English too much. Maybe he had reminded me a few times, but the point was it was the end of the day, and I was so done, I was so tired I was slipping into English without even thinking about it. So he decides to put his foot down and declares that I have to write out 100 lines that say Je parlerai seulement français en classe, which means I will only speak French in class. I was like, haha, very funny, I'll try to speak French, thinking he was joking because it's 2012, who makes kids write lines anymore? But no, he gets mad, he is dead serious, now it's 200 lines, and I'd better not keep arguing. The whole class is watching now, dead silent. I was not a student who ever got in trouble, so this was exciting stuff, I suppose. So I'm like, fine. You want 200 lines? I'll give you 200 lines. I sit down and get to work, writing the same word all the way down vertically, before moving to the next to make it faster. I'm zooming. I get it done in 5 minutes, 3-ish pages I can't remember, and go to hand it to him. He looks smug, thinking I learned my lesson. Until he actually reads what I wrote. Yeah, I wrote all the lines in English because of the cheeky kid I was. I will only speak French in class, literally written 200 times on the page in English. He never asked me or anyone else to do lines again. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.